tools like Schema can bridge that gap and repair the trust so that that BIM file is trusted through the entire process, maybe already to orderable materials.
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of CAD Talk. My name is Jörg Lantzsch, and in this podcast we are talking about computer-aided design, from software to hardware, from technology to future developments. Our guest today is special. He's a well-known podcaster who regularly talks about green buildings. Make sure to check out his podcast, Green Building Matters. Today, Charlie Cichetti is here in his role as co-founder and CEO of Schema, which is a startup company which promises to get BIM in minutes. Hello, Charlie.
Jörg, thank you for having me on. Yes, I love podcasting, so I really love what you're doing. I've been for 8 years, the Green Building Matters podcast, so this is going to be a fun conversation. But I built a career on green buildings and a shift to a tech startup. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. Can't wait to talk about how we fast forward the design of your buildings.
If you like, we could take a little step back and you could talk a little bit about green building. That's an interesting topic anyway. Before we go to your new startup, or relatively new.
That'd be great. So my background, though, Georgia Tech, then I got into construction, real estate, and then green buildings. You know, you can design and build green, new, out of the ground. There's programs like where you are, like DGMB in Germany, or there's BREEAM in Europe, and in the US, LEED, right? Is this a green building? You can design and build green, but you know, the company I helped build up that was acquired by a large global strategic based in Germany, TÜV SÜD, we also did a lot of retrofits. So let's not forget that to your listeners is sometimes it's just retrofitting, save energy, green cleaning, green pest control, recycling. But then sometimes it is, did we build out of some eco-friendly materials? Did we set up this new building or even this new one floor to be eco-friendly and run efficiently? So you got to look at it both ways, the new and the retrofit.
So let's talk about Schema. You founded it, I think, a few years back, together with two partners.
Yeah, we've got 4 founders. 2 of my co-founders were on the original team that built Revit. So I'm sure a lot of your listeners probably use Autodesk Revit. So Marty, our CTO, and Richard, our chief revenue officer, they were on that original team. And in 2002, that's when the shift started happening, right? The 2D CAD to 3D, BIM, smart models, and Revit Technology Corp was a startup, kind of like Schema is today, and it was acquired for 133 times revenue by Autodesk, the big Autodesk. And they saw, this whole movement now called BIM, Building Information Modeling, right? This is going to be a new way that designers approach designing homes and buildings. So we've got a 4th co-founder, Christina Bach, who's a licensed architect. It's great to have a licensed architect on staff because that's who we're initially building our AI tool for, is architects, even though our long game plan is to work with even building product manufacturers, ingest their orderable materials, and let's have a trusted design file for all of those involved, because we could probably have a whole discussion about, do people really trust those early design files all the way to when the doors open up?
You promise BIM in minutes. That's your claim on the website. Well, that sounds very, very interesting if I see architects and design engineers doing planning for months and months to get a proper BIM file. So tell us a little bit about it.
It's not too good to be true. So we actually have a brilliant team in Europe of software developers. One of our business partners had been building some machine learning and what would become kind of AI here. And so really where we're at is our tool, Schema, learns from your previous design files that are sitting on a server. And we're able to ingest that, learn the programmatic driven design. Let's say it's a hospital. Well, Schema is going to learn ever so many patient rooms, you need a nurse's station, and the hallways need to be this wide for the beds and the wheelchairs. And if it says X-ray room, you need lead in the walls. So our software is smart enough to go in and learn from maybe the last one hospital you designed or the last 5. And then we create what I call, if you like music, a greatest hits album of your BIM data. If you like cooking, we found some really good ingredients to use on your next recipe. So then you'll lay out your project in Schema, or maybe another tool of choice like SketchUp or Rhino or TestFit or Autodesk Forma. You can start in different tools, or you can start in Schema. And then our fast forward, our BIM in minutes, is once we lay out and solve and lock the building, our export is your initial BIM file, typically Revit, but we play nicely with the other great BIM tools. And so we just really fast forwarded the whole middle from early programming and schematic to getting you close to construction documents. Now you can get in there and configure things, but we want to give you a great first draft. And that's our claim for BIM in minutes. Now, your team can still move around rooms, you can adjust things, but our export is getting you right back into your normal workflow. And that's very important. And I would challenge your listeners is it's a new concept on how we're going to actually design buildings and homes. We call it a tool chain. I have 3 young boys here in Atlanta, Georgia. My boys are essentially now 17, 14, 12, all summer birthdays here. And we pay a little bit of money for Netflix. We pay a little bit of money for Disney Plus, maybe a little bit for even one more TV app for our entertainment. That's kind of what's happening in the building design software industry. There's no longer one piece of software, one platform that's going to do it all. We're just shifting away from that, right? And so the new thesis that Schema has been written up about is a connected cloud-based ecosystem of design tech and construction tech apps that share data and bonus, maybe have AI. And so we already have integrations with some other really great design tools. And that's just how you're going to design your buildings going forward. And BIM in minutes, we've learned from your previous designs and give you a fast forward to get you to that great first draft.
Learning from the previous designs, that I asked this earlier, what happens if you're, let's say, a new architect starting up your new company and you don't have any previous designs? What do you do? Stealing them?
That's a great question. Because data, right? If you go to ChatGPT right now and you say, look, render this new hotel in Frank Gehry style or Zaha Hadid, we don't know if one day we'll have to pay a royalty, maybe to their family estates. We don't know. So we protect our customer data. So we don't share that data with anyone else. So let's say we have a client that designs hotels. We're going to learn from 1 to 5 or more of their previous hotels, and we don't share that with other customers. It stays within their Schema account. Now, to your question, let's say, yeah, you're an entrepreneurial new design firm. I love business. You love business. We have some templates that our team has built out for schools, for hotels, for warehouse. So we do in our own catalog, which we make available to anyone that signs up. You can use some of our starting points, but you won't have the very, very detailed wall section that maybe a firm that's been doing this for a long time has. But we will still give you a nice head start.
What about detailing? I share my office with a design engineer, interior design and architects, and they have a project in the moment and they're sitting hours and hours for details on doors. Which doors, thickness, material, protection class, and so on. How can this be done automatically? Because there are decisions to be made, huh?
Sure. So this is where we have to start talking a little bit about LOD, level of development. Sometimes you could just say level of detail, if you will, kind of in slang terms. And so with Schema, if you let us ingest, learn from just LOD 100, 200, more blocky, block and stack, we're going to have room layouts. That's what we'll output. But if you can actually let Schema ingest LOD 350 or down the road, LOD 450, like shop drawings, then we're going to have a very high level of detail in our BIM export. And I'll give you an example. When we're designing a building, if we have an elevator, typically it's going to say to be designed by others later, the elevator. The architect's not going to know the detail of the elevator, but if we know we're going to buy from ThyssenKrupp, I'll use them as an example here. If we're going to buy from ThyssenKrupp, and if we already could have ThyssenKrupp give us their shop drawings and say Revit, we can ingest it. And then when Schema outputs your total team bin file, it's got high LOD 450. ThyssenKrupp already knows all the parts that they need to order. So that's where it's going. You could call it industrialized construction. You could call it design for manufacturing. There's so much pressure being put on designers to think of constructability. When I got out of Georgia Tech, I worked for a construction company, $400 million US per year construction company, we had to figure out our means and methods, how we're going to build what the blueprints say. But more and more of that is being pushed to the architect. And I think the architects have resisted it because they might not pick up more design fee, right? It's kind of like, hey, we need you to do that too. Think about how you're going to construct it. Tools like Schema can bridge that gap and repair the trust so that that BIM file is trusted through the entire process, maybe already to orderable materials.
You mentioned, let's talk about software. You mentioned that Schema can work together with other software packages, but also you mentioned that you can do the whole design in Schema. How does it fit together with, let's say, with Revit?
Yeah. So to clarify, we are not trying to be a Revit killer, quotes. We think there's some great design platforms out there. Revit really has positioned itself to be kind of almost the ultimate final step to your construction documents, that high level detail, that kind of contract set of documents. So we want to work really well with Revit and Graphisoft. We have one client that never goes to Revit. They go straight to CATIA, which is a Dassault product there, where we're really going straight to modular construction. So to clarify, Schema, we can connect all these great tools. If we've learned from your previous data, we can fast forward quite a bit of what really would have taken a long time to lay out rooms, even some details. Maybe you're a young architect that spends a lot of time detailing stair drawings for the first 2 years of your career, and that's kind of boring. Well, let's automate that, right? So then we will export you back to your kind of final steps of your normal workflow. Me and my co-founders really feel strongly that we can't disrupt the entire workflow of the architect. That did happen with Revit, going from 2D to 3D, but it took years, all through the 2000s, for Autodesk to really become that number one with 3D smart systems like BIM. And so we're not trying to be a Revit killer. There might be one or two tech startups out there trying to do that right now, and we can name them. But our position, we want to be able to connect with all the great tools out there. Some of them we have formal partnerships and API connections with. Like one of our investors, Thornton Tomasetti, is an 1,800-person structural engineering firm based in New York. They have other offices. They have an AI tool for initial structural engineering design. So we can get early steel, wood, CLT, or concrete calculations after Schema's really laid out the project. So we really want to be a connector. We want to be a fast forward, and we want to get you back to the tool of choice. 80% of the time, that's Revit.
Your startup, and you said you won't be, or you're not planning to be, the Revit killer. But in general, how do you think let's say, the software part of the AEC tech space will develop in the next year?
Yeah.
Is there a company out there that might replace some of the big players? Really disruption?
Yeah. So there's, the biggest in the AEC tech space, of course, is Autodesk, Nemetschek, not far from you. Then we have Trimble here in the US. We also have Bentley Systems in the UK getting back into vertical building design software. And then you also have Dassault Systems. You could also argue Schneider Electric and RIB, also German ties. And then there's a couple private equity. So those are the biggest of the biggest. And so our position is what we would call co-opetition, meaning, we really want to make sure we're compatible. We complement those great tools. Now, one day they typically could invest in a great company like ours, maybe one day acquire a company like ours. That's kind of what happens and has happened over the last probably 20 years in our AEC tech space. I think the only one case study that's different is Procore, which is a great construction tool. They did go public. Other companies that are coming on the scene, some we have partnerships with, like Augmenta. They're an AI tool for MEP design. So we have planned integrations there. I mentioned AI for structural. So we're trying to go out to our friends in industry and say, hey, our tools complement each other. Let's make sure we can co-market together. Let's make sure literally our softwares talk to each other. And I think if you added up a few of those, that's a force to be reckoned with. With the big companies over here, they're having to come up with their own AI thesis. What I've learned in software, since my background is construction, real estate, and green buildings and online education, is the big companies either buy, build, or partner. buy, build, or partner. So at some point they have to think, hey, gosh, what would it cost to build a schema? And that can be a long time and a lot of money. And at some point they say, hey, let's go ahead and make that a part of what we have.
Good. You mentioned your kids are like 12 to 17.
That's right. Yeah.
Would you recommend them to go to your university and study architecture or design engineering in the AEC environment?
Well, you're the first to ask me that question. That's really great. With
so the background is, what do you think the future will bring to an engineer, a design engineer, architect?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with kids, though, first, I always heard this. There's 3 A's: academics, athletics, or arts. Pick one. Kids kind of gravitate to one of those a little more than the others. My oldest son, Blake, he's the arts. He plays the drums, leads the marching band drum line at the high school. He plays on a rock and roll drum kit, and he's arts. He loves music. And and then our middle son is gymnastics, but he also is the academic, loves to learn, and then our youngest son is the athlete, Silas. He plays soccer. So when it comes to maybe what could they do for college one day, we just want to give them options. As far as architecture and engineering, really any career, I want my boys to get familiar with prompts and AI, even the simplest of ChatGPT, not to do your homework, not to upload all the math problems. No, to converse. And how will this be a part of your day-to-day life? And that's just so important right now. That is just where I want my boys to be, is embrace technology, but really become a pretty decent at prompts for our simplest of large language models. As far as the construction, architecture, engineering trade, I'm a fan of it. I don't think AI will kill those jobs. Now, in the next 10 years, will there be more robots in construction? Absolutely. Finishing drywall, and probably a lot more than that. Will we have more specialists that need to oversee the knowledge reuse for, say, even a tool like Schema? Yeah. And so it's all about the change, but I would support them if they wanted to get into architecture, engineering, construction, but even more reason to start early, and then, with the thing with a young professional, when they get out of school, instead of just doing busy work for 2 years to pay your dues, you might can be the creative problem solver that you thought architects get to do, and you'll have less of the 2 years of grunt work.
Okay. But the point I wanted to hear from you is that AI won't kill all the jobs in architectural firms.
No.
That's a future outlook, I think. Huh?
It is. I think right now our customers, like in Atlanta, we have a great early customer of Schema, 200-person firm, TBS Design. And when they're using Schema, it helps them not just win some more work, because when you have an RFP and all of a sudden the client says, wow, they almost designed the whole building, we haven't even hired them yet. Like, they want this job. So that can help with options early when you win the work. But also it helps that 200-person firm maybe compete against the 400 or 500-person firm. So that's another way to look at it too, for the under-resourced but growing firms.
Okay. Thanks. That's a good outlook into the future. Was great information. I hope our listeners like it as well. Thanks a lot, Charlie.
You're very welcome.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If not, please let me know what you like and what we could improve in the future. If you have any suggestions about topics we should talk about, or you have potential guests, I'm happy to hear from you. And in addition, of course, do me the favor and click follow or subscribe in your podcast player now. Doing so, you will not miss the upcoming episodes. For today, I say goodbye, and I hope you will listen again to the CAD Talk next month.